our third tutorial for our student data analysis application. In this tutorial, we are going to talk about the reports that are existent within the application. Before we do so, I would love to inform you that the current reports available within the system are not the final set of reports. There will be more reports added to the application as we go forward and as we update the application. Some of these reports are already shown as coming soon on your main screen, and we are going to give you a sneak peek into these reports in our next video. The Get Picky report, the Get Students report, and the dashboard are examples of future reports that we plan to include within this application. The dashboard in specific is going to be a very special report that you could use in situations where you want data on the spot. You don't want the entire set of data, you want more of a summarized version of the data you have. For example, in a parents-teachers conference, you want to see a couple of figures, a couple pieces of data here and there to be able to speak to the parents, express to them how their children are doing. Are they improving? Are they not improving? How they could improve? What areas they need improvement in? Now, let's remember or review a few points that we have spoken about in the last two tutorials. Before we could view reports, we need to make sure that we have defined our quarters. Again, I remind you, you don't need to define all quarters, but you need to at least define the quarters for which you're going to add assignments and evaluations for the students for those specific assignments. We also need to define an evaluation scale and stick by it. You cannot change the evaluation scale from one assignment to another, so think carefully before you assign an evaluation scale and make sure that you are going to be able to stick to it. I remind you again that the evaluation scale can be anything from 0 to 1, 0 to 10, 0 to 100, 0 to a million. Doesn't matter as long as you know what your scale looks like, understand where you are going to allocate your students' performances within that scale. Now, after we have made these definitions, we need to add some data to the application. That's the data that we are going to use in generating our reports. Now, this data is basically classified into 4 categories that are defined within the Add Data buttons on the left of your screen. Add criteria, add assignments, add classes and students, and add grades. Now, if you need to refresh on your information or you haven't watched our first 2 tutorials, I'd advise you to go back and watch them before you venture into this tutorial. So, the student reports. Now, we have 3 student reports, one by assignment, one by date range, and one by quarter, as you can see. Let's check the first one. The student assignment report basically will allow you to pick a class, pick a student within that class, and note that if we delete 6A over here, we will not have any students, will not be able to bring up any students. So what we need to do is pick a class, 6A, pick a student, Lori Price, and pick an assignment, let's say essay writing 1. Now we see here how she performed on each of these criteria that we have input into the application earlier. The total at the bottom here is the total of all these numbers, and the possible total is basically the maximum she could have obtained. Again, I remind you that these numbers do not represent grades, but rather represent a point on your evaluation scale of how good or bad a student is performing. Also remember that it's totally up to you to design that scale. What I mean here is you could consider on a scale of 0 to 10 that 0 is 0 mistakes and 10 is completely erroneous on a certain aspect or criterion. However, you could also consider that 10 is perfect and 0 is got nothing right on that aspect, that particular aspect or that particular criterion. So we return to our index screen and we check the second report, student assignment by date. Now in this report you need to select a class, select a student. Let's change the student here to Terry James, or let's change even the class, 6C, Melissa Hernandez, and the starting date is, let's change it to 1 January 2016 and the ending date to 30 March 2016. That will give us a total number of assignments that Melissa have done and submitted of 1. Now if I change this date back to the 1st of September 2015, we'll see her performance in 3 assignments. We will see how Melissa performed on every one of these criteria, and we'll see a total and a possible total in all of them, again, depending on how you look at your evaluation scale. A bigger number could mean she did better, or a smaller number could mean the same, depending, again, on how you have decided your scale will look like. Now we return to index and we'll look at the third student report. The third student report is basically the student performance by quarter. Now the dates here, as you can see, are set 1st of September 2015 to 31st of October 2015, 1st of November to 31st of December, and so on and so forth. You only have to choose the class once, 6B for example, and let's choose Carol Nelson. Now Carol Nelson here has performed over the 4 quarters differently. In the first quarter, the total number of points within these criteria is 111. In the second quarter, it's 129. In the third quarter, it's 135. And in the fourth quarter, it's 111. Okay, so what you're probably thinking here is I assume that there is an equal number of assignments per quarter, which is not the case. Over here it's one assignment, one assignment, one assignment, one assignment. However, it could be 1, 2, 2, 3, or 1, 3, 2, 2, whatever. This is made up for in the next half, or in the other half of this report, which is the more interesting half. We will click on the button on top over here, View Graphical Report, which will take us to the Student by Quarter Graphical Report. Now, there are 2 views to this report. First of all, this one could be a little bit of a jumble because it includes all the criteria. Let me just scroll here. Okay, so each one of these lines, as you can see on the right side, represents a quarter, and it shows the performance on each criterion within that quarter. But since it's more of a jumble, we could also review the performance per criterion. How do we do that? There are 2 options that we could go for. We could click on this menu and select a specific criterion. Now, let's go for run-ons. Now, if you look here with run-ons, Carol's performance is at 80% in the first quarter, 0% in the second, 90% in the third, and 60% in the fourth. Now, this resolves our issue of Carol performing or evaluating Carol's performance using numbers when the amount of assignments she might have submitted within different quarters are different. Basically because we are taking these values and evaluating them as a percentage. Before we venture forward, let me show you a couple of things on the screen as well. First off, to return back to the full graphical report, we could click this drop-down menu and go to all criteria, or we could, let me go back, we could go back to using this button over here, show all criteria. Again, instead of choosing a criterion through the drop-down menu, we can go to the single criteria graphs button, click it, it takes us here, and instead of choosing a criterion using this drop-down menu, we could also go with next, 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 viewing every single criterion one after the other. Okay, so now we return to our index screen to view the rest of the reports. The second group of reports we have here are the class reports. Now, in the same manner as with student reports, we have class reports by assignment. Now, in this case, we're not viewing a specific student, we're reviewing all students within a certain class. So 6A, essay writing 1, or let's go with summer book report, number of students 20, that means 20 students submitted this assignment out of a total of 20 in this class, and the total points over here is 2646 out of a possible total of 5400 for all students, and the totals for each of the criterion is shown next to it. Next is the class assignment by date range. This report will work identically to the student report, except again we're only selecting a class here instead of selecting a class and a student. Over here we could select a certain date range to work with. So let's say instead of 1st September 2015, we'll go from 1st of October 2015. That changed, if you notice, the number of assignments to 1, and we will go to 30 March or 31st March 2015. It's not necessarily the beginning and ending, 2016. It's not necessarily the beginning and ending of a month, but just for random, because I don't really remember the dates I added to the database for various assignments. So here we have 40 students have submitted a total of 2 assignments. That means that while the class has 20 students, that means that all the students submitted both of the assignments. We have the total amount or the total figure for each criterion, and we have the grand total performance-wise out of a possible total of 10,800. Last but not least, within the class reports is the class reports by quarter. This report works in the same manner as the student by quarter report. Again, only we're selecting a class instead of a class and a student. So we've selected here 6A. If we change it to 6B, you'll notice that each quarter gets a change to 6B. And we also have the dates already set up. Now this is why we have added the quarter dates over here on the index screen. Let's go back to the report. So here it's pulling the quarter dates from the main screen, and it's showing the number of students who submitted, the total number of assignments we have for each quarter. Here there are 2 total assignments that we have recorded, but we have not added the data for the second assignment yet. That's why it's showing a total of 2 assignments. But like I said, we haven't added the data for the second assignment. So in the same manner, we're seeing here the total figures for each of the criterion on the left side, and we are seeing a grand total for the class for each quarter out of a possible grand total. Again, this would assume that we have X number of assignments in each quarter, and this X number is the same and does not change. However, if this number changes, we want to evaluate it as a percentage, which takes us to the graphical report, within which we can see everything assigned as a percentage. In the same manner as with the student by quarter report, we can click on any of these criterion in the drop down menu over here to view a single report, or we can click, or we can click on the single criteria graphs to see this report. We can go back from this report to the full report by clicking on all criteria in the drop down menu, or we can do that by clicking on show all criteria. In the same manner as well as in the student by quarter report, we can either select the criteria we want from the drop down menu, or we can click next to see every single criterion as we go. Last but not least, in the current set of existing reports is the comparative classes report. Now, this report is basically created by a wizard, which will allow you to see the report the way you would like to see it. It's pretty flexible and it will help you, I believe, in so many ways. Let's see how this works. Now, the first question on the class comparison wizard will always be, how many classes would you like to create this comparison for? So you can choose 2, 3, or 4 classes. Let's go with 2 and see what we get. What 2 classes would you like to compare? First class, let's select 6A and let's select 6B and then click next. As you see, every time we make a choice within the wizard, we're getting the selected report parameters at the bottom of our screen, showing us here, for example, the number of classes 2, the classes to compare 6A and 6B. What would you like to compare by is the third question. Let's go with assignment. Click next. Now, select the assignment you want to use as basis for comparison. Now, the thing about this wizard is the first and third questions are always the same. What do you want to compare by, and how many classes do you want to compare? The difference is always within the second and the fourth question. So if I choose 2 classes, I'll get a question for 2 classes as the second question. If I choose 3, I'll get 3. If I choose 4, I'll get a question for 4 classes. Now, if I choose to compare by assignment, I'll get this question. Select the assignment you want to use as basis for comparison. Select here essay writing 1 and we're clicking next. If we choose to compare by quarter, we will get a question that asks us what quarter we want to compare by, and if we choose to compare by date range, we will get a question asking us to supply the date range we want to compare within. Now let's see how that works. Let's generate the report here. Class comparative by assignment. Class 1, Class 2, 6A, 6B, 20 students and 20 students. Essay writing 1, essay writing 1. We're comparing by assignment pretty much. And we're getting here the performance for Class 6A for this assignment and the performance for Class 6B for this assignment, with 6A leading ahead with 2,714 points. Again, if we assume that maximum, well, more is better, 2,714 points versus 2,662 points out of a possible total of 5,400. We can view a graphical report from here. That works in the same manner as the other graphical reports we have seen before within this tutorial. We can choose a specific criteria from here. Next as usual. Show all criteria. We can choose to go to the single criteria graphs from here, switch them around from here if we want to. It's all one and the same as the previous graphical reports. Again, this report will help us see everything as a percentage rather than seeing plain values in case we have a different number of assignments for each class, which we assume is not going to be the case, but just in case, this is a given possibility. Now let's see the wizard with different inputs. Instead of 2 classes, I'm going to choose 3 classes. First class is 6B, second class is 6C, third class is 6D. Next. Okay, we want to compare by date range. Next. Now we want to compare 1st of September 2015 to 15th of March 2016. Next. Now we have all our selected report parameters. We're doing 3 classes, 6B, C, and D. Our point of comparison is the date range, and the date range selected is 1st of September 2015 to the 15th of March 2016. Let's generate the report and see how it works. See here, we got 3 columns instead of 2. We got the first class 6B, the second 6C, and the third 6D. The dates are the same for all 3 because we're comparing by a date range. The number of students are 60, and this is the number of students for all assignments. So we have here 3 assignments, probably with 60 students. 60 students have submitted the assignments in each of the classes. That means that 20 students in each class submitted the 3 assignments during that specified period. We have here the total numbers, or the total evaluation points for all the students within the class, for all the assignments within the date range, for all the criterion, and we have a total of 8,080, for example, for 6B, 8,103 for 6C, and 8,220 for 6D, out of a possible total of 16,200 for all 3 classes. We view the graphical report, which again works in the same way. Instead of having 2 lines in this main big graph, we have B, C, and D, 3 lines, 1 representing each class. We can select from the drop-down menu here what we want to view, what specific criterion we want to view. If we want to do that, we get the graph over here. We can change it from the menu, or we can click next and previous depending on what we want to see, and we can go back to the all criteria or main graph from this button, and we can go forth again to the single criteria or criterion graph from that button. Now let's go back to the index screen and check another combination of parameters for the report. Let's select 4 classes. We get here, first class 6A. Doesn't matter if we do them in a specific order. Let's go with 6C here, and then 6B here, and then 6D over here. Also, one very important point that I forgot to mention before I continue with this is at any point and during any step during this wizard, we can click Restart Wizard. So over here, we have 2, 3, 4. We can reselect what we want, change our selection if we made a mistake. Okay, so 6B, 6C, 6A, and 6D. Next. What would you like to compare by? Quarter. Next. Enter the quarter you want to use as a basis for comparison. Let's say quarter 3. Next. Now here we see quarter 3. The range is January 1st to April 30th, which is what we entered in our main screen. Let's generate report. Again, right here, before we generate a report, right here, if you find that you made a mistake and or this is not the parameters you want to run your report upon, you can click Restart Wizard and start over new. Let's generate report, see what we have here. Okay, so we have 4 columns, one for each class, B, C, A, and D. The starting dates, 1st of Jan to 30th of April, for each class, which is, I think that was the 3rd quarter that we selected. Number of students for all assignments is 20, 20, 20, 20. That means the 20 students submitted the one single assignment within that quarter for each class. Again, total figures, grand total out of a possible total. Again, a graphical report that we can view as a big chunk of data, or go to single criteria graphs, see criteria by criteria through the next and previous button, or through the drop down menu. And again, we can always go back and forth between both reports. This concludes our 3rd tutorial for our Student Data Analysis application version 1.0. However, we are going to post a video pretty soon showing you a sneak peek of what's to come on this application. We are going to show you all our new screens, or all our client screens. We cannot really put a time frame on it, but I can promise you that some of these screens are already being tested. I'm just making sure that the code that I wrote to run them is working as intended, and those will be out as soon as they're ready. Some others will be out later on. We also have a few other things planned, other reports, etc. However, we are still in the process of thinking or debating what they should look like. Once we have made a decision, we are going to let you in on our plans. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please make sure that you like it on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel and our Google Plus page, and also make sure, if you like the application, like what you see in these tutorials, that you buy the application from teacherspayteachers.com. Our store is called Just Teach It. Thank you very much, and we will see you again soon.